Hello and welcome back. Something people are often asking me is how I soften water. Now, you'll probably see some of my ICM images have very glassy water, and that is because of the long exposure. But I do sometimes need to soften that a bit further, particularly with ICM hand holding the camera. It's very difficult to get that glassy effect just how you like it. So sometimes I tidy it up a little bit, or this technique works on all sorts of other images. It could even work on a forest where you want to create mist or softness. So let me show you what I did. This is the original image I downloaded from Pixabay. So thank you to the photographer who shared it there. And then this is with my edits. So as you can see, my sort of trademark bringing up the colour, because I love colour so much. So I wanted to make the sea a bit more blue, but it's also softened out. So it's not so textured, it's not so contrasty. It's giving you that very soft ethereal effect. So I'm just going to show you how I do that. Let's get rid of these original edits by popping that down to the bottom. The first thing I do is create a Camera Raw edit. So what you need to do is take your original image, Command or Control J to duplicate your layer, then right click on that duplication, convert to a smart object to protect it, and then you're going to go Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and you will then be going in. I'm going to show you my edits. You'll be coming into this panel here. Okay, so what I did was I've made a tiny adjustment to the shadows, probably because I was thinking this was a bit shadowy up here in the oranges. I pulled the shadows a tiny bit, but apart from that, you won't see any edits in this front panel because I've done it on a mask. So your mask icon is the fourth one down on the right-hand side of this panel here in Camera Raw. So as you can see, what I've got is a mask on the sea. The first thing I'm going to show you how to do is create that mask really easily. So let's turn that one off and create a new one. So my easy tip for doing this is say select objects, grab yourself a decent sized brush, and we're not going to worry about the masks because they don't matter. Now, Photoshop does a fantastic job of selecting the boats, which really helps us out because although we don't want the boats, it was going to be really hard to get it to select the sea. So we've got the opposite. So I've now got up here, mask 2, right click, invert the mask. And obviously it's now grabbed the sky as well, but that's no problem. We can get rid of that really easy. Say subtract, and let's do that with a brush. Now I would just draw your attention to my feather is right down, and I've turned the feathering down because I want a reasonably hard edge to grab this horizon. If I have my feather up here, when I get down near the horizon, whoops, I've gone the wrong way, drag the feather that way. When I get down here, you can see how soft it is. It's pulling some of the sea back in, and we don't want that. So let's just come back onto the mask, and we want to subtract with a brush, and let's pull the feather down to the other end, because then we can brush and have a pretty straight line on the horizon, which is exactly what I want. Let's just paint that out nice and quick. I'm sure you know that when I'm working and I'm not doing a tutorial, I spend ages getting all my lines straight, but I'm also pretty sure that you don't want to sit and watch me for ages. So I'm doing a rough edit, but getting the point across, I hope. Okay, so we now have just the ocean selected, which is exactly what we wanted. And then what I've done is come down, so here we are, we're now on the mask, and the only thing selected is in white, which is our ocean. Let's turn off the overlay. And I tend to leave the contrast slider alone because it just doesn't really hit the spot for me. I'd much rather pull the shadows myself. So let's pull the shadows and let's give it a bit more white because I really love it when we get some white and some highlights up. And I'd rather put some black if that's what I want to do. But, you know, we can do that in a minute. Let's not do that right now. Let's leave that on 0. So come back a bit further, and I'm going to pull my texture. Don't want all that texture on there, so let's get rid of some of that. The clarity slider I'm very wary of. It can end up looking really wrong very easily. So I don't really go too far with that tiny bit. I'd rather pull the texture. Dehaze, we could move that just a bit. Because what we're trying to do is flatten this out. We want that lovely flattened effect. But I think I'm going to leave that there. And that's all I've done. I've come out, said, okay. So the first job, let's just go and see what we started with. That's where we started. That's where we're at now. So that's the first part of this edit. Right, the next thing that I've done is then created blank layers. So to grab yourself a transparent blank layer, use the little plus icon down here at the bottom of your layers panel, and you will get a nice fresh piece of paper basically to draw on, which is what we're after. So something I always do is use the colours that are already in the image. If you start adding colours that aren't here, it's immediately going to start being very difficult to manage. And I'm also going to be using multiple layers. So I'm going to do this layer, this goldy bit in the front, and then I'm probably just going to use one layer for the blue, just because I'm sharing this on a tutorial. If I was doing this for myself, I'd do this section in the front here, then that bit where the ocean looks a bit more white, and then another layer again for the back. But let's keep this nice and simple. So I need to colour pick. I've already got B for the brush tool. The brush is selected. So this is one of my arty brushes that I'm using. I am going to be creating brushes over the next few weeks, and I will put them on the website. If you need more brushes to go in your brush pack, if you come to your brushes here, make sure brushes is selected rather than brush settings. You want brushes. Use this little icon in the corner and then come down to get more brushes. That will take you out to your Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, where you'll be able to download more interesting brushes. Okay, so to select colour, we want to colour pick from the image. So to do that, let's say with the brush selected, it's B for the brush tool. We're going to use Option or Alt if you're on a PC. Hold that down and you'll see your colour picker appear, and click to pick the colour off the image. So now, you notice my flow is at 65 and my opacity is at 100%. I like to reduce the flow because that's something I can build up, whereas opacity is just literally about transparency. So let's just colour in this front bit. You can see it appearing on my layer over here. Give it a good colouring over. Looks terrible, but that's not a problem. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is then grab a mask. And on my mask, I'm going to drop my opacity of the brush. Make sure I've got black selected. I always make my brush a bit bigger because what I'm looking to do is just break this up a bit. So let's just break that up. It's just too much. We can always go back over and add a bit back in, which I'm going to do because I don't want these lines here. So I've gone white. If you want to toggle backwards and forwards between black and white, it's X on your keyboard. That's exactly what I'm doing. If you watch my colour box, I'm just going backwards and forwards. So I just want to break this up but still have an effect. So you can see there, that's what I've painted out, and this is my colour. And you can also drop your opacity and fill, which I'm probably not going to do at the moment. We'll see in a moment. So the next thing I do is duplicate my layer. Command or Control J to duplicate, just so I've got a duplicate copy of it. Let's turn the top one off, work on this one. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And let's just pull this up a bit. If you go completely up to the top, it's almost going to look like it's spread the colour out across the whole image. Let's come down and you lose the effect that you want. But we kind of want that. We want a bit more of that ethereal feeling, or I do anyway. So you can see it's almost like spreading the paint across the canvas. Let's say okay. So without, with. And you can see how that colour's just touching up here onto the boat. So but that's without and that's with. Let's turn the next layer on. So then I'm going to play around with my blend modes. So I kind of want this a bit lighter. Let's Gaussian blur this one as well a bit, but not quite so much. Let's just drop that down. Let's have a Gaussian blur on it, but not quite so crazy. And then with the bottom one, let's see what that looks like with a different blend mode. And then play around with your opacity and fill. And then do the same on the next one. You don't want to go for these darker colours. This is going to be adding that contrast back in. So light and depth are created by deepening or darkening, multiplying. We don't want that. That's not the effect we're looking for. So I'm kind of looking to soften. And you soften by reducing contrast. So, you know, I think I'm probably going to leave that on normal for now, but actually pull down my opacity just a smidge. So let's put these both in a folder and call it the gold layer. So that was without it, and that's with. We're going to come in and adjust this a bit more, but for now, let's just leave that as it is. We can always come back to it in a moment. So then let's grab another blank layer. I'm going to colour pick, Alt or Option, colour pick my blue. Oh, make sure my opacity is back up at 100%. Come in and start painting blue on this layer above. So I'm going to just whiz through this because I'm pretty sure you do not want to sit and watch me painting blue on this image. And if I was doing this, not doing a tutorial, I would be taking a fair bit of time to go around this very carefully, zooming in. I'm constantly zooming in. I tend to work more zoomed in like this, coming in and painting around my boats as well. We can get rid of it off the boats easy enough, but I would just be taking a lot of time to work on the detail. But again, I'm sure you don't want to sit and watch me doing this. So I'll see you in just a moment when I've got this all coloured in blue. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, so here we are. We've got this blue all painted over our ocean. So as you can see, I've duplicated it. I've done nothing else to it. So here we are. This is layer 4. So this is what it looked like when I'd finished. And then all I've done is Command or Control J to copy it. So again, what I would do, the first thing I'm going to do is come in and go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And let's just smooth that out. And you can see what happens if you watch it. That's it with no blur. Now watch the boat. So where I've painted over the edge, if you come and blur it, it just kind of tidies it up for you. I will go in on a mask afterwards and tidy all my edges up with a sharper brush, but you find when you keep blurring things, it tends to work itself out. So if you come right up here, that's too much. Now you almost can't see the effect. So but we want to stack it. We don't want one massive, great big solid effect because it's too much. Turn on the next layer. Again, let's go back in, blur. In fact, before we do that, let's Command or Control J again. Turn the top one off. So we've always got a fresh copy of the original. Because if you notice, I'm not using smart objects on these painted layers because it takes up tons of processing power on your computer. Obviously, I've got recording software running as well. And it's just unnecessary because so long as you have copied your layer, you've got one anyway. You can easily just delete and duplicate again. Or to be honest, it was just painting. We haven't lost anything really super important. So let's just bring that back down. That's our second layer. So that's without, that's with. And this time I'm probably going to make that screen blend mode and probably I'm going to come in and just reduce it a bit. So every layer just adds another layer of effect. So this one is on normal again. Let's go in, let's duplicate it again. So we've got a copy. We're on layer 3. Let's go in filter. And this time I'm going to put motion blur on it. So there's my motion blur. If you turn your little dial around, that is telling it which direction you want the blur. So you could, if you wanted the blur to be pointing upwards that way, you want to create a lot of haze and smoky, soft, whatever it is you're trying to do, fog, mist. If you paint any colour and then come in and put a motion blur on it and pop the motion blur facing that way, it's going to give you that misty effect. So let's turn it around that way because I'm blurring in this direction across horizontal. That's without, that's with, very subtle, but that's good. So again, let's drop the fill down and the opacity. And what colour are we going to make this one? Might just make it overlay or soft light actually. Is that going to be enough? Colour dodge. I'm a big fan of colour dodge. It's a bit too strong for a lot of people. That linear burn puts back some colours. I kind of like that. We can reduce the opacity and fill down because we've got another layer above, which we've turned on. So this is our colouring layer again. Come down. Don't want to colour burn it. Maybe. Or do I want to use screen, overlay? What am I going to do? Pull down my opacity. Pull down my fill. So we've got 4 layers. That's where we started. Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. Okay, so that's kind of softened that out nicely. I think my gold layer needs to be a bit softer. So I'm going to come in. Can I do anything with what I've got, or am I going to duplicate? I think I'm going to duplicate it. And let's just turn off this mask. That's quite strong. That's what it actually looked like when we started. So let's come down and just see if we can make this a bit lighter. That's better. So I kind of like lighten. If I go beyond that, if I go down to screen, it makes it white. Color Dodge is going to make it white. So lighten just lightens that gold. And let's just drop the fill down as well. Let's just drop the opacity. And let's just see. So that's where we started. Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. Might be too much for you. You might be thinking that's too strong. It's fine. Just showing you the technique so you've got it. And then let's just go in. Okay, so let's put all of these in a folder. So shift click. If you click on the bottom layer, hold the shift down and click the top one. Grab a folder. We'll call that the blue layer. So let's just see what we've got. That's where we started. So we've got Camera Raw on. So that was before. That's with our Camera Raw. That's with the gold layer on the front. And that is with the blue. Now, I probably think that's a bit strong this time. Let's have a look and see what my original edit looked like when I wasn't feeling the pressure of sharing with you. So that was my original edit. So what I've obviously done is come in and used more saturated colours, probably come back into Camera Raw and just pumped up that blue a little bit more to even out the colour. But I hope you get the idea. So the other thing I just wanted to share is let's put both of these into a folder of their own, because here is a really handy little tip. When you've got stuff in a group, you then have this option of pass through. So if you put a mask on the group and have pass through selected and paint black. So where we've got colour all over these boats, I'm just going to go in with my brush and paint black. And I've got my art brush selected, but that's okay because I'm gonna actually use a blur on the mask, as I'm going to show you in a minute. So you don't want it too harsh because then it looks really obvious. So with the mask selected, come in and say filter blur and Gaussian blur your mask, not too much because that's too much, you're going to lose the effect altogether. That's without, a bit harsh, want it a bit softer because it needs to blend. This is a great way of blending it in. I think there's probably a sweet spot which is about there. So let's turn the mask off. That was before. And that's with. So what we've done is brought through, we've passed the boats through all those colour layers that we've just added by putting them in a group. And when you've got the group, select your group, you'll see this pass through option appears. And then you create a mask on the group and paint black, and you'll get your subject back through so they haven't got all that colour all over them, but without the aggravation of doing it on every single colour layer. So that is how I soften out, or start to soften out, where I've got an ocean that's just a bit too strong and textury. And you could use that in a forest, you could use it on an open green, or you can use it on the ocean. So that's one technique for smoothing things out. Okay, I hope that helps you with your painterly edits, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.